In June of 1944, a 14-year-old boy was executed in the electric chair in South Carolina. 3 months earlier, George Stinney Jr., an African American, and his sister were playing in their yard. 2 white girls, ages 8 and 11, stopped and asked them where they could find flowers. Later, those girls failed to return home, and a search party was organized to find them. The following morning, their dead bodies were found in a shallow ditch. 14-year-old Stinney was arrested. The only evidence against him was the circumstantial fact that he had spoken with the girls the day before. Stinney was subjected to hours of interrogation without his parents or an attorney. The sheriff later claimed he confessed to the murders, although no written or signed statement was presented. Stinney faced a sham trial, virtually alone, with no African Americans allowed inside the courthouse, and his lawyer failed to call a single witness. The entire trial, including jury deliberations, lasted less than 3 hours. George Stinney Jr. was convicted of first-degree murder. He was the youngest person executed in the United States in the 20th century.
In 1944, George Stinney Jr. was just 14 when a rush to judgment sent him to his death in South Carolina's electric chair. Convicted in the murders of 2 little white girls, Stinney's trial reportedly took just 3 hours. The all-white jury deliberated just 10 minutes. Now, 7 decades later, attorneys for the Stinney family asked for a new trial to clear his name.
George Stinney could not have committed these murders. I think George Stinney saw those children, but I don't think George Stinney was the last person to see those children.
The bodies of 11-year-old Betty June Binnicker and 7-year-old Mary Emma Thames were found in a ditch in the small town of Alcaloo. A coroner's report at the time described a brutal beating. Multiple severe head injuries suggested the killer used a blunt instrument about the size of a hammer. Family of the victim still believes Stinney was guilty.
They had no choice in how they died, and he did, and I think that justice was served according to the laws in 1944 when this happened.
In the few records that still exist, Stinney allegedly confessed, even told police where to find the murder weapon. During the trial, his attorney called no witnesses, asked no questions, and filed no appeal after the young boy was sentenced to death.
How did I know?
Today, Stinney's siblings testify the teen was innocent, with them the entire time.
And I want to clear the air. We are not allowed to go any place without my mother's permission. They were very strict with us. We could not go no place, nowhere.
And listening to the family on the stand today, they draw a picture of a case in which critical evidence seemed to be completely overlooked in this rush to judgment. They pointed out, in a crime like this, there would have been a great deal of blood, and yet they found no blood anywhere on their brother's clothing.
Don, the obvious question, David, why did it take 70 years for this case to go back to court?
This was a very slow-moving thing, but it continued to build over the decades. At first, the family was afraid to speak out. They actually had to leave their home. The siblings were talking on the stand today about how they had to leave in fear that a mob might show up to do them all harm after their brother was arrested. So they left in fear and didn't talk about it for a while. But they continued to keep the conversation going, and it took decades for them to find people to listen, to be curious, and to actually start doing research on this. They actually came up with some potential witnesses to bolster their case, including one man who was the cellmate of their brother, who said the young man at the time said that he did not do this and that he was forced into a confession.
What's up, party people? See, that right there is why a lot of times I have such a hard time trying to keep my cool about some of this stuff and not to be so passionate about it. Because when that chick sat up there and said that those girls didn't have a choice in how they died, and George Stinney Jr. did, How fucking stupid can you be? Do you really think that 14-year-old chose to be electrocuted? Do you really think that 14-year-old boy chose to be stripped from his family, put in an electric chair, and electrocuted until death? How fucking stupid can you be? And that's the thing that kills me. Because a lot of times, such ignorance to racism places you in the shadow of stupidity. Like she sat up there and said, oh, well, according to the laws back then, if they found him guilty, he was guilty. So I still think he's guilty. Once again, how fucking stupid can you be? There was no evidence. There was no witnesses. All they went off of was the word of 3 racist white cops at a time of rampant racism in South Carolina, where there's rampant racism. But facts, witnesses, and evidence don't matter. If those cops say he did it, he did it. Even though they said in the court hearing, with that amount of harm done to those girls, for that 14-year-old, 90-pound boy to come home with not a speck of blood on him, ain't changed his clothes, not a speck of blood on him. But, see, and that's the thing. That's why I pay attention to the words people use and how they use them. Because that could be very telling. When she said that when she used the words, the laws back then, or the laws in 1944. Because back then, if a crime occurred and there was a black person around, that black person did it. That's pretty much, ain't need evidence, ain't need witnesses, didn't even need facts. If there was a crime committed and there was a black person walking around, that black person did it. If a cop said he did it or she did it, they did it. And that's all it took. So I'm really curious now. After her sitting there and going through that entire, because I didn't look at the trial, but she had to sit through the trial. So is it guilt that's keeping her from wanting to believe that they electrocuted this 14-year-old child for no fucking reason? Or is she just that planted in her stupidity to think that 14-year-old child still committed those crimes? Like things like this. Like, even though I keep sitting up here saying, oh, we got to get along, oh, we got to work together, I'm not blind. I'm not blind. I'm not stupid. And there's a little piece of my mind that feels that we will never get over racism. Because there's too much history there. There's too much wrongdoing there. There's no way to just move past that, because some people just, they're not going to do it. Like, I keep thinking that it would take some type of outside influence to get us to recognize that we're all human beings. But even if aliens came and attacked, we could have a global war going on against extraterrestrials. And in somebody's mind, I'll still be looked at as a nigger. With all that going on. In somebody's mind, I'll still be just seen as a nigger. That's why I get so passionate about these things. Like, I can't even, like, my wife, she loves black movies. But, and I do too. But it's the slave movies that I can only watch so much of, like, before I start getting pissed off. Like, there's only certain stuff I could see before it starts anywho, that's my video to remember George Stinney Jr. The 14-year-old black boy that was electrocuted for no freaking reason in this land of the free and home of the brave. Y'all be safe, be blessed, one.